Alright y'all, so I'm making this video because I realized that making video essays is something that a lot of people that I talk to want to do, but they feel kind of overwhelmed with learning how to do it. I know there was a point in time where I did it, and I feel like it's really important to be transparent about your process when it comes to being creative with anything, and I really appreciate the people that I follow in creative scenes that end up doing stuff like this, so I want to do it too. I started video editing about 10 years ago-ish. Wow. Oh my god. It's been almost 10 years. I didn't think about that. But almost 10 years ago is when I started video editing, and I really started by just shitposting. I did not start out making video essays. I started with Photoshop at first. I was just editing people's heads onto random things, and then I was like, I want to do this but in video. And I started just randomly learning how to do that through a video editing class, a multimedia class that I was taking at the time in like middle school, and I really just built off from there. There was a certain point in time, maybe about 8th grade, where I was like, I actually want to make an edited YouTube video essay, kind of like the people I'm watching now. And those people I was watching at the time was like Satchell Drakes, Dark Pixel at the time, people like that. So I was like, I want to make one of those myself. That was my process of learning how to do that, and some people might not take that same path, so you don't have to take the same path that I did, but that's what I did. And I think that me piecemealing information and resources together to do that took a very long time, and I think that there's a faster way to do that, and it's to watch videos like this one. So you're in the right place right now. Honestly, if there's one or two things you take away from this video, it's this: don't let your lack of resources or lack of technology or anything like that stop you from trying to make your first video, because your first video is going to be shitty. I'm gonna say that again. Don't let your lack of resources, such as like a computer, a good computer, or a mic or anything like that, stop you from making a YouTube video, because your first video is going to be shitty. I'm gonna say it. No, I'm just playing. I'm not gonna say it a third time. But just have low expectations for your first video. You can always remake your first video, but you have to make your first video. It's very important that you try and fail whenever you're trying to make YouTube videos, or just anything creative in that case. Like if you get too wrapped up in trying to have the best equipment to even start, you might find that you don't even like it, or you just might not start at all. So it's important to start. That is the biggest takeaway that everyone should have, is start. As soon as you finish this video, try to make that first video, because I'm gonna try to lay out everything, the whole process, from like actually editing the video to making the thumbnail to recording your audio for the video to writing a script for the video. So everything you need is here. You don't need anything crazy. But yeah, I'm actually gonna say it a third time. Make the video. Make your first video. It is going to be shitty, and that is okay, because you can always remake your first video, but you have to actually make your first video. So first, let's talk about some programs that you'll probably use. So I use all Adobe products, as you can see down here. I use Photoshop, I use Premiere for video editing, Photoshop for making thumbnails and picture or image editing, and then Audition for recording my sound. I also use OBS, which you can see right here. And that's just to record footage and stuff like that. OBS stands for Open Broadcaster Software, and you can also stream using it too. And then I just use Google Docs to make like the script and stuff like that. So that's pretty much the basics that you need. For microphone, I use a 15 microphone, which is extremely cheap. It's about $50. It's a condenser mic, which means that it'll pick up pretty much every sound possible. So like if someone's downstairs and they sneeze, you'll hear it on this mic. So what you want to do for condenser mics is use NVIDIA Broadcast. If you have an NVIDIA graphics card, RTX graphics card actually, to get rid of it. I use that to get rid of some of the noise in the background. Ideally, you would want a dynamic mic because it won't pick up everything, but condenser mics are usually cheaper and pick up a lot of sound. So I don't know how you would get rid of it outside of like editing it out if you don't have an RTX card and can do this, but that's what I do. I don't really have a good solution to it. When I made my first YouTube video, I had my crappy laptop, the Xenoblade video. I had my crappy laptop and I did not have a graphics card that could do that. So I used the built-in mic and I just sat in my closet and recorded it that way. So that's an option too. I actually recorded it on my phone because my phone had a better mic than my laptop. And I just transferred it over and then edited the video in or the audio into the video. So this is what my scripts usually look like. I love writing, so I write a lot, and I also am very bad at improving and writing off or talking off script. I make a lot of errors, so I usually write exactly how I talk. This isn't how I typically write for like academic stuff like that, but usually I just write exactly the way I talk, and I read it exactly off like this, and I write a lot of notes for myself on the side too. So your script will not probably look like this, and it also looks like a typical paper because that's I'm a communications major, so I write like this in general, and I source my shit too. So, you know, gotta give myself props. But your script will look the way that it'll look for you. This shouldn't be very hard, but this is what my scripts look like if you want to see how these usually look. This is what my thumbnails look like. Stylistically, it took me a long time to get to this point. There's a really good video by EMPLemon on what the thumbnail meta is for YouTube. You don't have to follow that, but you're competing against other people in the recommendations, so you should probably think about how your thumbnails look. This is the most important part of a YouTube video, arguably, because this is what's going to get people to click on your video. So it should look good when it's zoomed out like this, and you should be able to tell what it is. General guidelines from me, at least. But I think that's really important, is to make sure it looks good when it's zoomed out, and also make it readable, and make sure that they know what the video is about, unless you're trying to clickbait them, which is also an approach that you can make. I don't personally do that, but it's something you can do. I typically try to make at least 3 different variations of it, like the thumbnail. Sometimes I do stuff like this. I thought about doing this for the thumbnail. I always try to make multiple versions of it just so I can have different options and stuff like that. But this is the final one. The other 2 that I just showed you were other options. But I'll make a thumbnail later in the video, but this is typically like a breakdown of what everything else looks like on here. But finding footage is probably the worst part of video editing, but you gotta do it. It's dirty work. So the best way to do it is to honestly record it yourself if you can. I highly recommend that if you're getting into making video essays consistently, that you just stream your footage. What I typically do is I'll stream it on Twitch, and I'll upload it on YouTube, and I'll download the Twitch VOD, because Twitch doesn't lose quality. It takes up a lot of space though. I record my own footage that way, or I'll just straight up go into the game and record it. I save a lot, so I can usually go back to the specific point I want, and I'll do that. But if you don't have that, you're probably gonna have to find someone else's video. So I'll just go to my own video right here. Shout out King Recon. And yeah, what I did for some of these videos is I will just full screen this thing. The watermark might be there, and I'll just straight up record this through OBS. Another alternative method that's probably better is to download the entire VOD or the entire clip you want from someone else's channel. By the way, source the people you take footage from, or ask them, better yet. Don't steal people's footage. I say being hypocritical. But there's YouTube to MP4 sites you can go to download this footage yourself. There's a Twitch downloaders, YTDL, the program for that. I'll look it up real quick. This program is good, but it's kind of hard to use. I use this to download footage most of the time, and you can just use that. It's a CMD program, so you kind of have to have a little technical knowledge. I still get confused on using this a lot of the time, but there's YouTube to MP4 programs that work too as well. So if you want a short clip, you can usually just like record the footage and then, you know, just sit here for 2 minutes and record the footage you want. I'm sure there's programs that'll let you get rid of these watermarks on the bottom right if you just want to do that. It's a little unethical, but you got to do what you got to do. But finding footage is a really long and difficult process that you want to do well ahead of time, because I feel like that takes the most time for me personally, is just trying to find footage. Also, music is the same thing. You can go on YouTube and just go to YouTube MP3 thing, and then just use the music that way. Yeah, finding footage is just a really tedious process that you just gotta do. Alright, so let's get into the actual editing part. So I'm just gonna edit the clips that I just made, that you just watched before. It's gonna be a little bit meta, and I'm gonna edit the videos I just recorded and make them into the video that you're watching now, which is kind of scary. So what you do first to make a video on Premiere is new, and then project, and then just name your project. It'll give you a file, and then that's it. So let me change the default view really quick if I can remember how to do that. So right here, you're probably going to start in this view, which is essentials. It's going to load up like a random file. I don't like this at all. So what I recommend doing is going up here and then clicking on editing, and it'll change to a little bit of a better view. Let me restart the workspace actually. So this is probably what it's going to look like. So this window down here is where all your effects are. This is where all your videos are going to be, and then a bunch of other stuff that I honestly don't ever really look at. So I really just use this tab and then the effects tab. This is where you're going to start your video at. This is the timeline for the video. This is where your clips and your sources go. Also the effect controls are up here. And then this is where the finished product or the display is going to be at. So what you want to do after you start and change to editing view down here is right click and then do import, or you can just drag and drop some of the media in here. So what I'm going to do is this is my Umineko video. Let's not look through my files actually. I don't know what's up in here. So you can drag all of these in here or do it one at a time, but typically do that. So what you want to make sure you do before you start is create a bin. A bin is basically a folder to keep your stuff organized. So usually what I do is I'll put all my videos into one bin, and then I'll do audio in another bin, and then like images that I have into another bin like that. And you can click this arrow to like make sure that it comes through. Talking is hard, guys. So this is going to be very meta and you might hear me talk over myself. So I'm going to turn this down. So you can drag and drop this video in here, and what it's going to do is create a sequence. So this file right here with the little tree branching thing is your sequence. This is how you start your video. And when you drag and drop a file like this, it's going to create a sequence that's based on the attributes of this file. So if this file is 1080p and 60 FPS, as you can see right here, I right clicked and did properties to see this. The rest of the sequence is going to be 1080p 60 FPS. So I'm going to delete the sequence. Typically what best practice is to do is to file, new, sequence. So if I don't want my video to be 1080p 60 FPS, I want it to be 1080p 30 FPS, you would want to create a sequence that's 1080p 30 FPS. Or if you want it to be 720p 30 FPS or 720p 60 FPS, you'd want it to be like that. So if you drag in a file that's 1080p 60 FPS into a 720p 60 FPS sequence, it'll ask you if you want to change it, because the sequence is different and the file size is different. So if you do keep existing settings, the video is going to be bigger than the canvas is, because this is a 1080p on a 720p sequence. So the way to reformat stuff like this is to click on it and then go to effect controls. So whenever you click and highlight anything on here, the effect controls tab up here is going to show you all the effects. So this looks daunting, but it's not really much. I really only use like 2 or 3 features on here. So the position up here and motion is going to change the motion or position of the video up here. So left and right is the x-axis. Left is the x-axis, right is the y-axis. So if I move this left and drag, it's going to move up and down on the y-axis. If I do this, it'll do left and right. And if you want to reset, you just click on this arrow right here. So if I want to reformat or resize this video, scale is going to change the scale. So if I put it down like this and put it at 50, because this is half the size, I might have just lied to y'all. Okay, well, it doesn't fit on here perfectly, but you get the picture. 67 apparently, and not 50. And you can also move it like this. And that's how you reformat and move stuff. And you can also click on this stopwatch right here, and it'll allow you to make what is this called? These are called keyframes. That's right. These are called keyframes. So you can make something move in motion like this. So when I put this keyframe down at 0, 0 right here, this is the time of the video. It'll be right here. But if I drag all the way over here and I put another keyframe down, and let's say I move it to the right, it'll move to the right in that time frame. So the video will move to the right while I'm talking to myself slowly to this keyframe. And it's going to take about 57 seconds to do that, which is not good. So you can also move to another spot. Like let's say you want it to move that far in like 8 seconds. You can just move it over here and it'll move that far in 8 seconds instead. This timeline up here also moves this timeline right here as well too. So real basic stuff. So if you also want the scale to move at, say, like if you want it to shrink while it's moving to that direction, you can do the same thing. So if you want it to happen at the same time, you can click on this arrow right here and it'll automatically advance to the next keyframe. And then you can click on this keyframe and then move the scale as well. So now when you go back, it'll shrink and move to the right at the same time. And you can right click on a keyframe and like copy paste it, or you can just delete it, or I don't know what these other settings do actually. But if you don't want to do that, you can delete it, or you can hold Alt and drag it, the Alt key and drag, and it'll duplicate. And that's the same for down here too. So if you hold Alt and you drag something, it'll duplicate the exact same thing. There's also rotation. Uniform scale will change the way that like whether or not you can change the width or the length individually. So like if you turn that off, you can change both of these options by itself, but usually it'll scale itself based on the length and the width. If you don't want the keyframes anymore, you can just either click the stopwatch or just delete the individual keyframes too. You can also drag this too. So let's say that my audio was like extremely loud. I'm gonna do this, like we're gonna put on 600. It's gonna be, yeah, so let's just pretend my audio is extremely loud. I'm like, no, oh my god. So what we can do is right click on the audio individually right here, go to audio gain, and then you can either adjust it by a certain amount. So if you want it to go down, you would put -600, because I just turned it up to 600 decibels, which was a terrible idea, but now my audio is normal. Or you can set it to a specific time, right click, audio gain, set gain 2, and then you can set it to a specific one, so like 2. Usually what I do, it by default it's on adjust. I put it on adjust and I'll put it on like 5 if I want it to be a little bit louder. On the right here you can see a gauge, so typically you want to be in the yellow right here, and you don't want to be in the red. Sometimes you'll be in the red. So that's how you adjust your audio and everything. So also another thing too, you'll see when you drag the audio or this clip, it'll drag the audio and the video at the same time, but sometimes you want to break up the audio. So what you do in that case is right click, go to unlink, and now you can drag and drop both of these individually of each other, and you can relink them together too. They'll be linked by default, but you can unlink if you right click and do link. So let's say that at the beginning of the video, you want to get rid of this moment of silence right here at the start of the video. What you can do is go over here to the slice tool. What is that called? The razor tool. And you can click on this and it'll get this video right here and it'll slice it. And then what you can do is click on this and just press delete. And now the silence is a little bit shorter, but not gone. The video is going to start at 00 now. And there's just going to be this black space. You don't want that. So what you can either do is drag it over here, or Control Z to undo. You can click this little gap in the video and you can right click and do ripple delete. And it'll automatically push it forward if there's any blank spaces or gaps in your video. Like this. So you can also press the delete key to do the same thing, or I think you can do backspace. Yeah, backspace, right click, or just press the delete key. So you can also adjust the audio in this audio tab right here, down like this. You can also keyframe your audio too. So right here, remember the stopwatch is a keyframe. If you want the audio to gradually get louder or like softer, you can set up a keyframe, put one at the top, one at the bottom, and you can make your own fade in a little bit. So if you put this up to like 15, it's gonna get gradually louder the more you listen. Alright y'all, so I'm making this video because I realized that making video essays,
and you can
is
see this is
that
too
a lot
loud.
of people that I talk to want to do, but I feel kind of overwhelmed with learning how to.
So that's how you can change audio, and if you delete it, it'll just remain at 0 as well too. So if you want to put it in a basic transition effect, like a fade in or a fade between, let's do that real quick. I'll drag in this other one right here. So remember, I made a sequence that was 720 60 FPS. So when I drag this 1080p 60 FPS video in here, it's going to be too big for the screen. So what I have to do is scale, position, drag it down. An easier way to do this, like to fix this, is to, so if you delete this sequence right here, it'll delete the whole thing, because this is the sequence of the video. So you don't want to do that. You can change the sequence actually. Let me not do that. So let's say you mess up like I did and you're like, oh no, I made 720, like the sequence isn't right. You can go up here, sequence settings, and then this is where you can change the attributes of the video. So right now it's 1280 by 720 and 60 FPS. You can change this to 1080. Wait, 1920 by 1080. It'll be like, are you sure you want to do that? And you're like, yeah. So now these videos that I resized to 1280 by 720 are in a 1920 by 1080 canvas. And what you can do now is either you can press this and reset to default, or you can just click this, or you can delete it entirely and just say, I'm just going to drag this in. Wow, isn't that cool? And so remember what I said about rip with delete too, is between these two clips there's going to be a gap, because there's a gap in the timeline right here. So after this video is done, it's going to do that. What you can do, instead of manually dragging this right here like that, that's boring. What you want to do, click on the gap, press delete, backspace, or right click, rip with delete, bam, right there. And so you see this gap right here too. We don't want that. So what you can do is slice tool or press C. So if you hover over any of the tools, you can see what the key is or the shortcut is, and you can just use that. If you press C, you can use the slice tool, click on here, click this, delete, right click, rip with delete. So now there's no gap between these videos. And so another issue too is if you're confused, the timeline that you see right here, the timeline's on the second video. I have this first video highlighted, and I want to fix this canvas right here because it's not zoomed in. So if I have the timeline on here and I edit this, I'm not going to see the changes reflected at all. You need the timeline to be hovering over what you want to edit. So I just messed up with this because I was confused, and like now the scale's messed up. You can press this to reset, and let's say the video is right here. You need the timeline thing right here to be on the thing that you're editing in the timeline view right here. So like that, and vice versa. If I come over here and I try to edit the scale or the rotation, I'm not going to see it reflected on here because the timeline handle right here is not over it. And I look at this and I'm like, oh no, what did I do? I rotated the video on accident. Oh no. So parameters are going to be here. You can fix that, and that's how you do that. So what you can also do for a transition between two clips is right click right here between the two clips and do apply default transition. And this is going to be weird sometimes and do stuff like that. Usually it'll go between the two of them. You can click on this right here. This fades out the audio, this fades out the video. You can delete these individually. So this will just transition out the audio, and then this will just transition out the video like this, if you look at this. Or you can just, you know, delete both of them. You have to click on the actual thing. This is the transition right here, and as you can see in the effects tab, you can see that there's individual options you can have here too as well. There's options like the alignment. So this is what it'll usually do by default, is center at cut, end at cut, or start at cut, and you can do a bunch of different stuff. But that's the basic way to make a transition. But there's other, if you go on the other ways to do it, if you go on the effects tab right here, there's a bunch of different effects that you can use. Audio effects, audio transitions, video transitions. Usually what I use is right here. I honestly just never go in here and do these crazy transitions because like these are some PowerPoint transitions. I'm not gonna lie, I don't ever use these. But let's say you want to get crazy, what you can do is grab this right here, this video transition you want it to push, and just drag this over here, and now the video will push. If you want to whip and nay a little bit, you can do that. If you want to split, I should probably start using these actually. So first they got some crazy stuff, and then they have some. Just play around. That's really what video editing is all about. Is just playing around, like don't be too serious, bro. It's okay. That's how you use transition. So let's just leave this one on here just because that one looks pretty cool. All right, back to the tutorial. So let's say that I want to like title all of these videos. So what you can do is go to the title tool, and you can just grab this or press T, and you can make a title box like this. And so from here, you can type in some stuff like programs and equipment. Cool. So right here, you'll see that the text, for some reason, the text box is like collapsed by default. So up here in the effects controls, you can go up here and you can change the font right here. So usually the font that I use is Futura. Future free, shout out Frank Ocean. But you see I clicked on Futura and the video did not update it. So what you have to do is highlight the text right here and then change the font. So I usually use Futura like this. And so click off again. Make sure you always click on like that. You can change the fill, which is the font color, and make it yellow like this. And then that's cool. Let's say I choose a color like black, like this. Let's say I use this and it's not readable at all, and you're like, oh no, what do I do? So the stroke tool, you click on that and it's gonna outline the text in that. So this is the color that you would want, and then this is the width of it. So you can make it bigger or smaller. I usually use, for this font in particular, I use like 20. I think that looks cool. You can change the alignment and stuff like that. A bunch of other stuff that I honestly never use that I should probably use. But another thing that's very important that honestly messed me up a lot is whenever you want to edit the position of this text right here. Let's say this is collapsed. Do not use the motion right here, because if you move it off like this, if you move this on the thing, sometimes it'll get cut off like that. So make sure that whenever you move text, I'm going to undo. When you move text, make sure you move it in the text box effects control tab, and then transform it right here like this. That way the text doesn't usually get cut off like that, because it's going to stay inside of the width of the text box itself. So this will move the text box itself. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but just know that there's two separate motion things, and this is usually the one you want to use, is the one underneath the text thing right here. This also has like the keyframes and everything like that. And yeah, these are going to be the real basic stuff. I'm not going to go too crazy with this, but yeah, that's how you make text readable. Remember, is the stroke tool and then adding the layer. Usually what I do for text is I just make the fill white and the stroke black like that. And this is the best way to make text readable, is white fill, black stroke. So remember that I still have the text tool like selected. So if I click on here, it's gonna make a new text box within the same thing. So I just made like 3 text boxes just now. So what you want to do when you're done with text is press V or use the pointer or selection tool, so you don't make these text boxes like that. Sometimes it'll get stuck and you're like, bro, why I can't do anything, and it'll frustrate you. I'm saving you the trouble of having to go through that, because it still happens to me to this day. I guess I didn't talk about the timeline yet. So these are the timeline is divided between video and image elements, and then audio at the bottom. So audio has 3 tabs open down here, and then video and images have like 4 open. If you right click this right here, not that, if you right click over here, you can add a track and it'll add a video track. If you right click down here, add a track, it'll add an audio track. You can change the way that it moves over here like this. Woo! You can also change the way that this looks right here. Woo! think my voice just cracked. And then so if another thing too is this blue box right here. If you see that, this means that you're focused in on this element of the window. And if you click the tilde key, which is on the left of the 1 button and above the tab key, you can focus the entire window on that window right there. So focus on this, click on that, you can see the entire timeline. This is really good if you have a small monitor or you're editing on a laptop. That's really cool stuff, right? So for fade-ins as well too, I didn't talk about this in transitions, but if you right click on the first part, you can do apply default transitions, and also you can zoom in and out of the timeline by holding Alt and doing the scroll wheel as well too. So now the video will transition in, and you can drag this transition out. So if you want it to be like a really long dramatic like stuff like that, you can just drag this out. You can drag it out for the whole thing if you wanted to. Because I realized like what's going on, stuff like that. With audio, you can also solo. This S right here is for solo tracks. So if I had music playing underneath, I could solo this track and you would only hear the voiceover, and you can click it again. And if you wanted to mute something, you can press M, which is mute. Voiceover record, if you have Audition, which I recommend you do, if you have this, you can add your own voiceover within Premiere itself. I don't ever use this. That's how you edit the audio. You can click on this I and it'll hide this entire track. So anything on this line is not going to show up anymore. I guess I'll try to add in some images. I'm gonna add in Froggy B. Shout out my boy Froggy B, bro. If you don't know who Froggy B is, you're lacking. So I just dragged in this picture of Froggy B, and I'm gonna organize it by putting it in the images tab. And here's Froggy B. If you double click on it, he shows up in this source tag. For images, it's just gonna show this. It's not gonna be anything special, but if you click on a different video, this is not in the timeline yet. This video on the video on script writing, if I click on this, it'll let you preview it. And if you come up here, you can set the source of like how much of the clip you want to use. So if I don't want to use any of this right here, I would click source in and then go down here, and let's say I only want to use this. I'll click mark out. And then what you can do is if you grab here and you just drag it in, it's only going to drag in the part that I marked in and out, which is really good for if you have a really long clip that's like an hour long, you can just mark individual segments of it. You can also grab this. If it's already in the timeline, you can just grab this and you can move it so that it'll automatically, you don't have to like redo it or anything like that. But the issue with that is this right here, this clip is focused on this part of the clip that I dragged in and not the one in the timeline. So if I click on the timeline right now and double click on this source right here, this is different from the one that I just had open. So these are two different clips technically. This is the full clip, this is the one in the timeline. So you want to focus on the one that's in the timeline if you want to edit it. But if you zoom out and let's say you see how the video starts right here, if I drag this window right here, the mark section, it'll change it and reflect the changes in the timeline like this. So I'm gonna undo and it's gonna go back to it. You can stretch out the clip, and if you look on the timeline down here when I do this, it'll reflect that in the timeline. You can also shorten it. You can also lengthen it this way, like that. So there's a lot of stuff you can do. I'm gonna get rid of this now. We're gonna click back on this down here in the project. You can also just drag the audio. If you click on this and drag it in, this or the video, it'll only get the video, and you can also only take the audio if you want to. You can also take a screenshot of either the timeline like this or this individual clip. So if I click on this, it'll take a screenshot of this that's on the screen right now, and same for this if I press this button right here. You can also mark in and out the entire sequence like this. I'll explain that later, because this can be kind of an issue for some people when they're exporting videos. When you press this plus button, you can also add in a bunch of other features. Play around with this stuff, I guess. It's really a lot of stuff you can use. I don't know what most of these do, to be honest. So let's say I wanted to add, oh yeah, Froggy B. Let's get back to Froggy B. So look, this is Froggy B. Let's drag this bad boy in. And as you can see, Froggy B is just gonna show up.
If I recall, maybe that
Bam.
was like 2016.
No.
So people like
Bam.
that. Video
Like that.
essays
So you can adjust how long he's on the screen right here.
around that time.
And I think it's a good point to make that anything that's on the top is going to be on the top layer. So like V4 is the highest layer, but if I move Froggy B underneath this video, he's not going to show up because this video takes up the entire screen. It's layer based. Let's get this picture of Kevin Graham right here, like this. Get this picture of Kohaku. Remember to organize your stuff. So if you click and press control click, you can select multiple elements and move them all at the same time too. So let's just drag these bad boys all up in here. So these are layer based, and as you can see, Kohaku's at the bottom because she's on V3, Froggy B, V4, V5. So it's based on your position that you drag it in. The way you can edit these again is if you go up to the top left, effect controls, you can edit these elements like this. So if I move Kevin down to the bottom layer, he's not going to show up anymore, but I can move him up. He's at the bottom now. Kohaku, I can move her over like this on the bottom, and I can move Froggy B over here like this, resize him, rotate him. I can also make him rotate like this. Really cool stuff. Isn't technology incredible? Look, so another thing too is whenever you're adding music, what you want to do is make sure that the audio levels are right. So I'll show you how to do that real quick. Also, by default, there's magnetism, which means that things will automatically snap, but it's off right now. So to turn that back on, you click on this magnet right here, and it'll automatically snap to the timeline so that things align properly. So if we look at this, I have a 30-minute song on here for the editing section, but you'll hear how loud this is compared to it. Remember what I told you about soloing and muting? So you can solo this track to only hear this and also gauge how loud it is. So typically you want your balance to be like, if your audio for your voice is up here on 6, you want your audio to be down here at like 42. So what I usually do is I'll solo this track, I'll right click audio gain, I'll do like -10 or something like that. So now you can hear and see and gauge this. You can hear it, compare it to your voice. It's going to move up and down on the y-axis. If I do this, so this is a good volume. And if the track gets randomly louder, you can also keyframe it like I showed you earlier. So it all comes together. So yeah, that's how you add music. Aside from that, I think that's pretty much everything at a basic level on video editing. We'll move on to the next section. So to record audio, what you want to do in Audition is go to File, New, Audio File right here. This is what you want. And then in order to start recording, you can either press this button or you can do Shift and space at the same time. So I'm just going to say some stuff. I'm recording audio right now. Yay, let's go. I'm so excited, guys. And then you can hear it back. Press space. I'm recording audio right now. Yay, let's go. So the bottom is a gauge to see how loud something is. I'm not going to scream in the mic, but just know that red is bad. You don't want red. You want to make sure that before you start, you're always in the yellow. And you can continue recording if you press control and space again. But if you do it back here, it's going to record over this audio. So now what I just said is getting deleted. So you don't want to do that. You can stop it and then press Control Z to restart so it doesn't record over. What you want to do is drag the timeline over to the right and start recording over here. So now that I recorded directly over there, it's gonna immediately go back. Go to the right and start. So you see how weird that sounds? So typically what I do afterward is I will go to insert and then silence. I bound this to my F key because I use it a lot. You can also right click and then do, I might have just lied. There it is, silence. But yeah, edit, insert, silence, and then you can set a time. So I usually do like 10 seconds, and this will give me a little bit of a buffer between the things I'm saying. So this would usually be like the intro of the video, and then this will be, you know, the second part of the video, and I'll do this. Start recording like that. And so let's say that I'm done with the audio here and I'm like, thanks for watching guys, ring the bell, like, subscribe, share with your friends, blah blah blah, all that. I'm done. Boom. Whole audio. This is the whole video right here. File, export, back to file again. This is your WAV file. Ideally, WAV is the highest quality, so you would want to export it in WAV. You can also do MP3. Don't do FLAC or AIFF because Premiere Pro doesn't support it. So you can go to browse and then export it like that. I'm gonna do this. So now if we go here, click on this. Okay, my files are not organized like I told y'all to do, so I'm sorry. Move over here to my voiceover, and I don't think I actually, what is this file name? Editing tutorial. This is the file I just made. So if I double click, it'll show up here. This is the whole thing. I'm gonna drag it in like this, zoom in. So what I typically do is I'll leave the silence in between them and I'll just edit it out like this. So I'll slice it up, and then like now I can just put this between different stuff, and then like, you know, that's how I usually import audio whenever I do voiceovers. I recorded it inside of the actual video file on OBS this time around, but typically you want more control over your audio files because you can't really edit audio very well in Premiere Pro, but this will allow you to edit audio a little better, and you can do some crazy stuff like you can sample the silence, I guess, or background noise, and you can edit it out. That's something you can do in here. You have better control over like specifically, so like if you do a little voice pop or something, you can just delete it, and it just gives you finer control over what happens in your audio. And this is really helpful if you stumble and stutter and make a lot of weird noises, or you have background noise. You can edit it out in Premiere Pro and stuff like that, or Audition. That's audio editing. Alright, so now we're in the thumbnail part, which is personally my favorite part of the editing process. Honestly, it's a lot of fun to make good thumbnails. I threw this one together. I don't know what the thumbnail for this video is going to be, because I'm kind of thinking I don't want it to be like anime or game related, because this is a pretty general video, but it's really part of my channel identity, so I might do it. I think that this one looks pretty good, but I don't know if this is the vibe I'm going for, but I'm going to remake this just so y'all can see. So typically when you start to make a YouTube video, the dimensions are like 1920 by 1080 or 1280 by 720. I'm gonna do 1920 by that good old 1080, and I'm gonna just start with the basics. So usually when you want to place a file, you'll start with this canvas. I'm gonna assume that you have basic Photoshop knowledge, but I'm still gonna explain stuff on a basic level. So if you go to File, Place Embedded, means that it'll automatically be embedded into the file, the Photoshop file, and if you take the image out, it'll remain. If you delete the image, it'll remain in the Photoshop file. But linked means that it'll link to a file. So if you rename or replace or edit the file, this file will update and edit and be edited to what you edited it to later. But embedded means if you change the file later, the file will still remain the same. So I'm gonna just place this. I'm gonna go ahead, and what I did first was I deleted this because I edited this in myself. This is gonna be a little janky, but here's an issue that we have. So rasterized image means that it's not directly editable. So what I typically do is I'll just get a paintbrush tool, I'll click on it, it'll ask if you want it to not be rasterized anymore, which means that you won't be able to upscale it without it looking weird. So you're cool on that. So now it's not rasterized anymore, which means that we can edit the video or the picture. And I'm gonna just clip this out. And what I did was I pretty much just took a screenshot of my desktop right here, just a random thing, so it looks pretty. Made a new layer, threw this thing underneath it, bam, like this. This is really more talking about not how to Photoshop per se, because like that's a whole video in itself. But this is mainly just like how I do my style, so I'm gonna go a little fast on this part. So what I typically do, the most important part for my text is I will start with this, all caps video, like this. And also, I don't mean to like gatekeep y'all because I'm giving y'all the information now, But find your own style. Don't just copy paste what I'm doing. Get your own stuff. I'm gonna just show you how I do it. Really, also a good tip for making thumbnails is look at the thumbnails you like and just practice Photoshop and try to get better at Photoshopping so you can replicate this stuff on your own. Because a lot of the thumbnails I make are replications of a lot of different elements of my favorite thumbnails that I think really work. I think that this format really works for me personally because it's visually cool. Like, you can tell what these videos are about and it tells you, you know, the title of the game and everything like that. It's really cool. So I'm gonna cut this girl out like some scissors for real. Hard line. You can steal that if you got a cipher coming up. So typically what I do is I'll take this image out of the foreground or the background of the image. I'll copy it, paste it, put it on the top layer. So this way she's on top of the thing. And then what I'll do is I'll make a folder with this. I'll copy these two again right here. So these are copied. What I'll do is I'll double click on this. I'll take the fill out. I'll turn the stroke on again and it'll add this on there. So that way, when I do this, same thing here, take the fill out, turn the stroke on, put that on like that. I'll put this image between it like that. So that way this will show up on top of it. And there's gonna be some like weird little you know, things going on right here. Or another way to do this that I don't really do very often is just erase this so like this shows up on, oh, that's what I do. I almost lied to y'all. So yeah, I'll erase a little bit of this like that, so that parts of it will show up above and give it a little bit of depth like that. You can even do this, which looks extremely weird, which I don't recommend, but I'll put this below like that, and this way the image will show up on top on some like places and then below on other places like that. Sometimes you gotta step back and like really think about the thumbnail too, because like sometimes you'll be hyper focused on something like that, but people won't even notice it. It won't look weird to some people. I think this will. But sometimes stuff will just look weird because you're hyper focused on like looking at it. But that's really how I get this kind of effect right here. I think that having a big text and not a lot of visual clutter is really important for YouTube thumbnails. And I think like this format is really good that I figured out, but we can do better. But yeah, it's really basic stuff. That's usually how I make my my YouTube thumbnails sometimes. Alright, so I just finished editing this video and I'm gonna show you a way to export your video, or the way to export your video, but also some common, you know, issues that took me a long time to process, and I still make this mistake. So I'm gonna let you know now. Mark in, mark out is important when you're exporting your video. So right now, this is the end of the video as far as I've made, and mark out is way past this right here. So keep that in mind. But in order to export, you go to File, Export Media, or Control M, either one works, and you click on that. And right here, I told you about the mark out, right? So this is the end of the video right here. But if I scroll to the right, it still has this like marked out area. So this is gonna render in the video. So if you render this right now and upload it, there's gonna be like at least 2 minutes of just blank nothingness. So you don't want to render that. So to get rid of this issue, go back to the edit tab. Let's say this is the end of the video. What you want to do is click on this and go to the very last frame and then click mark out like that. So now it's only going to render this much of the video and not this part of it. So this is a really big tip. I make this mistake to this day. And now you can see that it's going to go to the very end, or you can click on the range. Source in out is only going to do the marked area. Entire source is going to do the whole thing, and it's still going to render this like messed up area. So typically what you want to do is source in and out and then just specify what it is. And yeah, so you can send it to a media encoder, which I recommend. If you download this, make sure you download Adobe Media Encoder, or you can just export it within Premiere Pro itself. There's really no difference performance wise. You can name the file here, you know, whatever you want to. It's cool. You can click on this to export it to a specific spot, and this is a preset. So this is going to go based on your source material or your sequence, and then you can click on that and you can edit it through here. Click on this tab, much of different options. Typically you just want to leave this alone if you set the sequence right at the beginning, and you can just export it, and then after that you can upload it to YouTube and you made your first video essay. Yay! So let me know if you got anything out of this. This was a very long video. I hope that somebody learned something from this video. I would really appreciate it if you let me know, and show me the videos you make with this tutorial. I'd really appreciate it. Make sure you like, subscribe, click the bell, get the notifications, share with your friends, all that good stuff. And I will see you in my next video essay, or never.